Yo, what up, everybody? I have a pretty exciting podcast for you today. I've got Professor Dave, who is kind of like a science public figure. He just debunks stuff, gives lectures, and it's really cool. Like, if you're looking for maybe tutoring in math or science or something along those lines, just search him on YouTube, Professor Dave, and he's a really good resource. I've actually learned a lot from him on math and biology and things like that. He also, he's debunked flat Earth and he's debated Kent Hovind. If you're familiar with Kent Hovind, he's kind of like a wacky, intelligent design guy, and or young Earth creationist. And so, yeah, he was really fun to talk to. I'm looking forward to talking to him again. I'm hoping that I can get him on here and we can dive into flat Earth a little bit more or something along those lines. And I hope that you enjoy this podcast. Thanks.
We have come here to expand our minds.
Okay, so today I'm here with Dave Farina. He goes by Professor Dave on YouTube and other channels. And so I came across your channel a while back. I think it had to do maybe with like the flat Earth debunking or something. But since then, I've actually used it to help me with math. So
Okay, nice.
yeah. So what made you start getting into that? Just making
Into
YouTube
the
videos.
channel or the debunks?
The channel in general, and then the debunks as well.
Okay, yeah. So the channel in general, I taught organic chemistry for a number of years at this trade university, and I eventually lost that job. But I had crafted these lectures. I had designed my curriculum, and I was proud of my lectures. So I just thought, well, all right, I want to archive them, so I'll record them to camera. And I'll put them on YouTube. I had heard, actually, to be honest, we were talking about music or by email earlier. Really what it was just I was on tour with a band and we were in the van and we were talking about like, you guys, we need passive income. We need to figure out a way to make passive income so that we can be on tour and but not like come home and not be able to pay rent. You know what I mean? Because we were earning a little bit, but not enough to take home. So I thought, all right, I heard that people are making money on YouTube. I'm going to try YouTube. So yeah, I recorded my organic chemistry lectures, branded a little bit, made a little, a little logo and a little theme song and tossed them up there. And they did pretty well. Organic chemistry students seem to really, really like them. So I made some more. I made some general chemistry, but I used green screen and animations and things. And people like that as well. So then I don't know, I got addicted and I was like, all right, we're going to do it. I'm all in. This is now the A plan. So yeah, I'm about 5 years in and it's definitely what's working for me in my life. So,
Yeah. So did you teach yourself how to do like the animation and stuff, or?
yeah. So a buddy, actually another guy in that band, sort of helped me launch the channel a little bit. He helped with the very, very first animations, but I kind of watched him. I watched him do it. So I would basically instruct what I wanted to be shown and he would do it and I watched him and I learned that way. So I took over after the first batch of tutorials. And yeah, basically nothing I do with After Effects in my tutorials is terribly complex. It's very, very simple stuff. And so, yeah, if I'm like, oh, I want to see this happen and I don't know how to do it, I just Google it and figure it out and then put it on there. So it's very basic stuff, but yeah, it is a one-man show. I've been doing everything on my own for 5 years now.
Yeah, that's cool. So I in preparation for this, I listened to a debate that you did with Kent Hovind. Do you think he's like authentic? He's not authentic, right?
No, he is not authentic.
Yeah, there's no way.
Authentic. He's the most intellectually dishonest person I've ever interacted with.
He's got to be, right? I mean, I just don't
Yeah, he's a snake
understand.
oil salesman.
Yeah, I like. What do you think that he personally believes? Like, I mean, that's hard to know, but I wonder if he believes anything. You know, if he has any real beliefs, I guess.
I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think he believes in money
Yeah.
and status, but he has had evolution explained to him so many times by intelligent people. And so him repeating the same talking points, the same deliberate misrepresentations of science over and over and over again for 30 years. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He knows exactly what he's doing. To his credit, he's pretty clever. He's pretty good at evading direct questioning
Oh yeah.
and putting up straw men that sound convincing to the uneducated layperson. You know, which is why certain people have had trouble debating him, and even I had a little bit of trouble just because I wasn't able to. I let him steer the conversation just a little bit too much, whereas I should have really hammered him on certain points when he exposed himself as being unable to discuss something. I should have just hammered away at him, but I kind of let him get out of a corner a few too many times. But yeah, no, he doesn't believe a word of what he's saying. He just makes millions in donations, and that's what he does.
Yeah, it's so weird when you listen to him because it's just like it's like listening to a used car salesman or something, you know?
Oh
It's
yeah,
strange. What do you
yeah.
think?
Sell you a car.
What do you think? Like the struggle is with getting the average person to, I don't know, get into the frame of mind where evolution isn't so carrying baggage. Like it doesn't make any sense that evolution has such baggage, but there's still creationists all over the place, and there's an arc in Kentucky. So
Well, the baggage is that it infringes on a literal interpretation of Scripture, which not that many people subscribe to. But if you do, yes, it's a direct threat to your belief system. And con men take advantage of that. I mean, con men always operate on the basis of fear or insecurity or something like that. So when you have a group of people, no matter, I mean, they're certainly not the majority in America, but there are a lot of them in America that take this sort of ultra fundamentalist approach to their worldview. It's so easy to trick them because you just sort of have some talking points that corroborate their worldview and taunt anything else, and they're on your side. You're their hero. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do, quite frankly. And so I think that the problem is that in order to comprehend basic evolutionary biology principles, you have to understand the very basics regarding biochemistry and biology. And most people don't, and certainly most fundamentalist Christians don't, because they view science as a threat to their worldview, which it is. Science is not a threat to religion per se. There are plenty of religious scientists, but your religion has to conform to what we know to be true through science. So if your religion can accept science, science is not against your religion. But if your religion is blatantly anti-science, yes, science is your enemy because it demonstrates that your beliefs are not true. If you believe that the world is 6,000 years old, you're wrong. If you believe that there's a God, well, all right, maybe there's a God. What do I know? There's no problem there. Science does not say that there is no God, but science says the earth is definitely not 6,000 years old. And if you believe that, you're wrong. So that's just, that's pretty much it.
yeah, I know. It's one of those things that it's really frustrating that in high schools teachers have to like couch the conversation in statements that are like, okay, so we're going to talk about evolution, but just it's just a theory, even though theory is basically proven, and they couch it in all this nice language to not offend students, but I think that it just needs to be just taught and not couched like that. And so I grew up in a Christian household and I went to a Christian school, and I actually didn't learn science going to school. You know, I
Right.
learned Christian science, which isn't science. So I had to like reteach myself everything. But when I was going to the Christian schools, even as a kid, like 15 or 14 years old, when I would talk to the teachers about creationism and the age of the earth and stuff, it didn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? Like
It
it,
doesn't add up.
and
Yeah.
I grew up in that. So I grew up thinking that's how it was, you know, but it didn't add up. But evolution just makes sense. You know, I mean, it's not like once you get the basic, you know, long time, small changes, it just
Yeah.
like makes
I
really
mean,
cohesive sense.
you
But
you got to understand a little bit about genetics. Like if you know nothing about science at all, it does. I mean, you have to know a little bit of science. But for me, once you learn a little bit about genetics, once you understand what gene expression is, everybody knows that DNA is the genetic code, but very few people understand what that means, right? Gene
right.
expression, the ways that genes are expressed to produce proteins, which is most of what we are. So once you understand that with some sophistication, it's not a stretch at all. It
Yeah.
immediately makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that is why society becomes more and more secular over time, because with every generation that passes, some percentage of people fail to indoctrinate the next generation because their belief system does not hold up to even an ounce of scrutiny, and children will scrutinize, right?
Right.
So some will just swallow what they're told, and some won't. So you didn't, and
Yeah.
because you thought and you said, "Wow, this like doesn't real." It's self-contradictory. It contradicts science. It contradicts logic. It contradicts itself. I reject it. So with every passing generation, our society grows more and more secular because of this. But I actually taught briefly at an Orthodox Jewish high school, and I was the science department. So I was told, I taught ninth grade biology, but don't teach evolution. I taught a little bit of astronomy, but don't teach Big Bang cosmology. It was just like, oh, teach the parts of the cell and look at the pretty star and the very
Was that
superficial.
was that difficult for you?
It was painful, and I got fired, of course, because I
Yeah.
couldn't I couldn't do it.
How
I
can you
mean,
do it? Yeah.
I deserved to be fired. They were totally justified in firing me, but they never should have hired me in the first place. They shouldn't even have a science teacher because they
Yeah.
don't want science to be taught. So
Right.
I don't know. I think they're trying to put on an air of tolerance when there is no tolerance, of course. So I was a bit inappropriate in that position. I just needed a job at the time and was going to take wherever I could get. But I was really baffled. I was really baffled. I mean, the students were very hostile towards being taught science and scientific ideas, and they were the most. They were the worst students I'd ever had. And I subbed in like Compton and Oakland and stuff. Like these were a lot worse.
Yeah.
So it's just I knew what I was getting into, but it was
Yeah.
it's difficult.
I grew up around. And I know that you don't listen to my podcast, but a few episodes I recorded a podcast with a friend. I guess I'm trying to a friend that I went to high school. We were really close in high school. I haven't talked to him since I became an atheist, like 12 or 14 years ago or whatever. And he remained fundamentalist Christian. And so I had him on the podcast recently, and we just, talked back and forth about his beliefs versus, why I don't believe. And,
Was it cordial or?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Actually, it was about 2.5 hours. And,
Okay.
I mean, it was full of fallacious reasoning on his end. And I was just trying to, really not attack his ideas at all. I was just trying to kind of like break down the epistemology of it and
Mm-hmm.
really get to the core of why he believed what he believed. And I don't think I changed any minds or anything, but I'm hoping that my listeners can see that there's a way to handle that. And my family is still religious, and my stepfather recently told me that he felt like the only reason that I like to read and research religion is because I want to be able to own people or something. And I love religion history, like the history of it. And
It's
I love
fascinating. Yeah.
understanding the reasons why people believe what they believe. Flat Earth is fascinating for the same reason. Like, it's just like, how the fuck, you know, but it's still
Yeah.
fascinating in itself. And so I wanted to be able to like show my parents too that that's not why I'm doing this. You know, it's not like I'm trying to just, I mean, you know, it might seem that way,
It's
but
funny that they could be dubious of someone trying to take a scholarly approach to religiosity. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's that, you know, like, oh, if you learn too much about it, then
yeah,
you'll reject it. But you do. I mean, inevitably, when you see how, I mean, I think that most Christians don't realize that the entire religion is plagiarized.
I
You know
know.
what I mean?
Have you
Like,
ever read Bart Ehrman or Ehrman?
no,
Have
no,
you
I
ever heard of
haven't
Bart
read that
Ehrman?
one. I actually, no, I haven't.
Oh man, he's phenomenal. He's a really good writer, but also he's got a
Hmm.
bunch of books. But he grew up Christian, went to every Christian Bible school that you can imagine. He's got a PhD, and after he learned Greek and he learned all these different languages, he can speak like 4 languages, and he translated a lot of the books and stuff. And after fully comprehending how the Bible came to be, he ended up losing his faith because he
Hmm.
recognized that there's no like cohesive
Yeah.
translations. It's all, you know, muddied translate, and the books that were left
Well,
out of the Bible were
yeah.
crazy too. But
Also, okay, flood myth. Oh, we'll take that one. Virgin birth. Okay, we'll take that. You know, it's just like it's cobbled together from older stories. I mean, it's not
yeah,
original. It's not well written. It's
right,
not. It's not cohesive. It's contradicts itself constantly. I mean, it's just.
yeah,
It's a mess. Like the idea that any rational person would take that as literal truth is insane. If you just think it's a nice collection of stories from which to get some morals, I mean, all right, there's like it condones slavery and all that stuff, so put that away. But like,
right,
okay, it says be nice to my neighbor, so I'll be nice to my neighbor. If the Bible to you is a book that says be nice to my neighbor and it makes you be nice to your neighbor, great. Be a
yeah,
Christian. That's totally fine with me.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
that's
Well, you
it,
know, the problem, yeah. So the problem that I run into with that, even though I do agree with you, and I'm not one of these people that are like, oh, you know, like, and well, I do say that sometimes, end religion, but it's more when I get frustrated. But um, the only problem that I really have with it is like even talking to my friend on the podcast a few episodes ago, it was really good, and then we got to the homosexual part of the conversation, and you know, in his worldview, he thinks that in order for the planet to be a godly planet, it needs to be rid of homosexuality. Like if you are gay, then you need to not act upon your gayness. And he claimed that homosexuals only want to do it kind of like, you know, like sometimes I want to drink a beer, and drinking a beer isn't always the best thing, so we shouldn't drink a beer. And I'm like, dude, you think that loving a man as a man is like drinking a beer? You know, it's just this.
yeah.
So
No, our sexual identities, our sexual proclivities, you know, these are as innate as any aspect of our humanity can possibly be. What we are attracted to, I cannot comprehend any argument that could ever label something like that as a choice. It makes no sense
I
whatsoever.
know, I totally agree with you. So
Yeah.
actually this might be a good kind of direction to take the conversation, because in that podcast he he basically asked me, well, so why do you think that people are gay then? And I was like, well, only like 10%, if that, are homosexuals, you know. And he
That's a
was like,
lot.
yeah. And he was like, well, he was saying that if everybody was gay, then the human race would die out. And I was like, yeah, but only 10% are gay, so they're not going to. Right, like
Yeah.
it's not like you can't do that if only that amount of people are gay.
Yeah. Now, I don't even know if it's worth bringing up because I can't
Mhm.
remember anything about it, but I do remember reading some fairly credible notions regarding the evolutionary utility of
That's what I
homosexuality.
was gonna bring up with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and regrettably, I cannot remember off the top of my head.
So
but I remember
here's what I
reading something
remember.
and being like, huh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it could be.
So here's what I remember, and maybe I'll bring it up and it might scratch the surface a little bit. But what I remember reading, and this was written by, I think, Robert Sapolsky, if you're familiar with him. He's a behavioral biologist, but he was saying that this is just a hypothesis and it's not proven or anything. But basically, in small tribes where there needed to be more attention given to siblings' childs, sometimes the siblings would end up not attracted to women so that they could not reproduce and give their attention more to the other child. So that's like one hypothesis, I guess. But I mean, who knows? But at the end of the day, who cares? You know, it's like, it is what it is. And we know that, you know, they love each other. It's, you know, it's not
it
even
exists in nature.
Yeah.
Non-human animals have homosexual relationships. This is observable. It's an aspect of nature. It is innate. So
So what do you think about abiogenesis?
I mean, it is definitely not as concretely understood as evolution by natural selection. That's for sure. I mean, I think that the problem is that those who state that that we have only hypothetical answers to abiogenesis, they are correct. However, they then extend that so as to imply that abiogenesis is impossible and we have no explanations. In actuality, we have many explanations. We have many viable hypotheses. We do not know which one occurred, right? We don't know exactly what happened, about 3 billion years ago. But the other issue is that one can understand evolution by natural selection with sort of a high school understanding of biology, whereas abiogenesis and research in abiogenesis requires like a bachelor's degree level of knowledge in chemistry and biochemistry. It's extremely complicated, and so it becomes a bit futile to try to explain, how certain biomolecules were able to polymerize. Right? It's just going to use really esoteric, terminology that lay people absolutely will not understand. You know what I mean? So the best you can do is say, look, we have a really firm understanding of how it may have went, and that's it's good enough for me. I am not perplexed whatsoever in terms of the notion that it did happen. Perhaps not specifically what happened, but once you learn about say organometallic catalysis, my favorite hypothesis regards mineral tidal pools. So the main problem is that the Miller-Urey experiment demonstrated conclusively that very small organic molecules can arise spontaneously. I mean, actually, to be honest, some of them can arise in interstellar space even. So very basic molecules, it's no problem. We've got them. We do need to explain how they then polymerized, right? From amino acids, we need proteins. From nucleotides, we need nucleic acids. And so in mineral tidal pools, the benefit of such a situation is that we make the pot way smaller. It's not the whole ocean now. It's a little pool. So reactants can find themselves. And we also have the opportunity of using minerals inherent in the surface to act as catalysts. So in organic chemistry, we have all of these different complexes utilizing transition metals that we use to catalyze certain reactions. A lot of them are polymerization reactions where we just take one thing, boom, 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 boom. And it's these little complexes involving platinum or tin or ruthenium or whatever. And so any kind of mineral surface becomes somewhere where heterogeneous catalysis can take place. So the tide comes in, you've got a bunch of small molecules, you've got a surface where chemistry can happen, so things can polymerize. And not only can polymerization take place, it can also be done stereospecifically. So a lot of people whine about how biomolecules are chiral, right? Instead, we've got L and R, but we always get the L, or we got R and S, we always get the R. Well, we do stereospecific catalysis in the lab with these complexes, so it's not a problem for that to have happened in this manner as well. So that's really my favorite hypothesis for this polymerization. Then assembly, micellar assembly, that's no problem. That's basically how soap works. So that's easy to do. So, that it's an oversimplification. There's a lot more to it than that. But, um, reasonable understanding of organic chemistry and biochemistry leads one to understand that abiogenesis is far from impossible. This is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean,
Mhm.
I think it's just going to be like everything else. We're going to think it's mystifying, and then once we figure it out, it's like, shit, well, how did this happen? That's going to be a tough one to refute, though, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, even if we were to never figure out exactly what happened, the fact that we can demonstrate many things that may have happened is good enough.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to learn science to understand it. So.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, this is kind of a political question, but do you think providing free education to people would help with that? Or, I mean,
Well,
I'm
they've
just,
already got it.
what do you mean?
YouTube is free education,
Fair enough. That's a
but
good point. Well, the
it's
problem with
it, it
YouTube, though, is that people can go down whatever rabbit hole they want, and it's not by.
that's true.
I mean, maybe you are a professor, but and there are a few people that, I mean, like Harvard and MIT have open sourced their stuff, which is really cool. But
Yep.
then there's people like Flat Earth Tony or something, who
Yeah.
it's like you watch a video on the Christian 6,000-year-old Earth, and it's like, oh, maybe it's flat too, and then all of a sudden you've
Right.
got these crazy beliefs.
And that's why we have a tremendous responsibility as a society to monitor content and speak out against it. So that's something I'm very interested in doing. So I studied science and found that I don't enjoy doing science. I dropped out of a master's program in chemistry, switched over to science education. But I don't like doing chemistry. I'm bad at it. I don't enjoy it, but I love explaining it. And so
You're like Bill
finding
Nye,
out. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, he has a master's in engineering, I
right?
believe. So, I mean, yeah, but he's more of a generalist, and I identify as a generalist. And they're just people, and there's a whole. I mean, it's become a viable career path now. So, as opposed to guys like Neil Tyson and Bill Nye, or if you go way back, Carl Sagan, it's not so rare a profession anymore. It's starting to become a more commonplace thing, and for good reason, because we need it desperately. We need people who can transmit the consensus of the scientific community to the public. So scientists are busy; they're doing science, and if they want to communicate it, great, that's awesome. But if they don't want to, they shouldn't have to. Let me do that. Let other people like me do that. I'm going to take what you do and explain it to people.
That's that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we need
it
it
is.
now very badly.
Yeah, it is kind of rare too, because I have some friends that are scientists, and you get them in front of a mic and it's like not enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a totally different skill set. I
Yeah.
mean, you can be a brilliant scientist, and maybe you don't like public speaking. Maybe you're not a very good writer. Maybe you're not very good at breaking down. Maybe you're brilliant and understand what you do, but have an inability to break it down in a way that's succinct and clear for the layperson. Or maybe you can do all that stuff and you just don't feel like it because
Right.
whatever, you want to do your science. You're a brilliant scientist. So, yeah, SciComm is coming up. There are academic programs now for a master's in science communication at various schools. There's official, positions in academia for SciComm. SciComm is thriving on podcasts and YouTube and stuff. So it's the dawning of a new age, I think.
I think so too. Do you think that it's because there was so much anti-scientific shit coming out the last few years that people are like really wanting to figure it out? Or yeah?
Yes. So I'm actually writing a book on this at the
Oh, cool.
moment. I'm very passionate about public science literacy, and even more so, I'm fascinated by the way the public perceives science. So there are, it can be very trendy to be pro-science, but in a very superficial way. And then, of course, there's anti-science sentiment. I'm very fascinated by anti-science sentiment. I like to study it. I like to diagnose it. I like to try to figure out where it comes from. And I am wholly convinced that anti-science sentiment has been spawned rather legitimately from an anti-industry sentiment. So certain practices in industry over the past 30, 40, 50 years, which have been very unethical and harmful to the environment, harmful to populations, harmful to society, so that has generated an anti-industry sentiment. And then now you've got this alt health industry, right, peddling cure-alls and pseudoscience that takes that anti-industry sentiment and broadens it to encapsulate science as a whole. So it says, no, you don't hate big pharma, you hate chemistry, and you hate chemists, and chemists are liars, right? So don't trust what a chemist says. Trust this ridiculous thing, and it's very, very effective because there are a lot of intelligent people who fall for this kind of thinking, and all it takes is mischaracterizing certain buzzwords like natural, organic, synthetic, these kinds of words, painting them in an incorrect light, and then leading that towards this alternative. The alt health industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry capitalizing on chemophobia, anti-science sentiment, anti-Western medicine sentiment, and it's a big problem. And that's one of my main things I'm working against here.
Yeah, I just had a virologist on last week who specializes in phage bacteria, and him and I were talking about vaccines for a little bit and just how there's this big anti-vaccine movement going on. And I think that you're right, because I think people tend to want to attribute blame to why they're suffering or why their family member died or why they're not doing well financially maybe or something like that. And as soon as a person or a company can come along and say, this is the reason why. And I mean, like you said, there have been serious issues with like farming and agriculture. I mean, in fact, the guy that I had on last week, he's a super high PhD at Rockefeller University. And he's studying phage bacteria because antibiotics have been so overused and overprescribed that, we're getting this resistant bacteria. And so it's kind of like, it's in the same area. It's like, yeah, this has been overused and misappropriately used. And the main areas where it's been misappropriately used is in farming and agriculture, because they give it to all of these animals in these huge buckets, and then they become, they're using these antibiotics. Well, that's like killing all of the bacteria in the soil. So then the bacteria is becoming resistant to the antibiotics that's in the soil and in the food and things like that. So that's kind of like this thing that science produced something, and then people that don't know shit about science misappropriated the use, and then scientists get blamed for it, and then people don't trust science, and so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's reinforced by tropes in 80s movies. The bad guy in the suit, from the big company come down. I mean, it's a very attractive narrative, right? It seems right, even without thinking about it. Yeah, the big bad $1 billion blah 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 is doing this, and in some cases they are, right. As we said, large corporations do unethical things. They're exclusively profit driven. That's not just pharma. That's all health. All health industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they do unethical things like lie to people. Every industry does this. So I try to do a lot of work in identifying false analogies, identifying false narratives, and saying, look, this is what you're being told. Here's the truth of the matter, right? This is why you got led astray. Here's the science, here's the industry. Condemn this, don't condemn that. It's a lot. It's a mountain of stuff to sift through.
Yeah, it's cool that you're doing that, though. I know, and I also think that even though there was a big anti-science thing that was going on, I think it's kind of simmering down a little bit. Do you feel that way or no?
Well, it's hard to say,
like
because
Flat Earth has simmered down a lot, and
Flat Earth has simmered down, and I do take some credit in that. But Flat Earth, see, here's the thing. Flat Earth is a totally separate category, reserved exclusively for the least intelligent and least critical thinking people, because anybody can demonstrate for themselves the shape of the Earth without understanding any science whatsoever, utilizing basic logic. So that is reserved for the dumbest and the most insane people. But I have an ounce of sympathy for the anti-vaxxer or the person that, because it's confusing, right? If you don't know anything about chemistry or biochemistry or biology, look, it's hard to know what to do because you have a lot of narratives coming at you, and you don't have any knowledge base from which to discern between them. So you're going on conviction, you're going on personal recommendation, you're going on flashiness, you're going on a hunch, you're going on all these things that you shouldn't be going on, right? You should be learning science, you should be learning the fundamental ways that the universe works and everything in it. But it is a tall order to expect everyone to know science, right? So that's why I try to lower the activation energy, right? I've got tutorials. It could have taken you an hour. Here it is in 5 minutes. Very brief, very simple, very succinct. But it's going to take a concerted effort from a generation of science communicators over the next 30 years to bring society to a semi-literate, semi-science literate level. But it must be done because there are incredible innovations that are coming in the 21st century that are going to transform the face of human civilization. And if humanity is not somewhat aligned in how we're going to navigate these things, it's going to be a problem because there's going to be backlash. Industries will capitalize on that backlash, will be led astray. I mean, we need everybody on board here, so.
Yeah, I know that. I actually had some friends that went flat Earth for a while, because I'm in like the electronic music world, and there is a lot of woo in the electronic music world. I don't know if you
for
know
sure.
that.
No, yeah. I mean, and in Los Angeles and in any major metropolitan area as well, because it's fun.
Yeah. It is fun.
It's sexy.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you 100%. I know it's like, with like 9/11 conspiracies or anything like that, I guess it's really easy to be like, oh man, that makes sense because it is kind of edgy. You're like, oh, I mean, like, and there is fucked up things that happen. Like, the Rothschild family running the world. Like the Rothschilds family really were super rich bankers back in the day that really did exploit a system. But to extrapolate that to they're running the world, it seems like a really cool, I don't know about cool. It seems like a really, like you said, sexy thing to believe, because then you can just attribute like everything to this thing. And that's kind of how flat Earth is too. Because if you think like the government's lying to you and everything is fake and you can't trust anything and you have the answers, then it's yeah,
there's tiers of believability. You know what I mean? The thing with the Rothschilds, or even take the moon landing, right? The idea that we faked the first moon landing, okay, it's not true. But I mean, it's like, it's not insane. It's not impossible. It is within the realm of possibility that could, okay, but it doesn't add up. You know what I mean? It just doesn't add up. But just flat Earth takes that conspiratorial thinking and brings it to this realm that is just, it's incompatible with every aspect of reality. And it's just that it's so sexy, because it's such a fundamental tier of reality, this fundamental thing, the shape of the Earth we live on, that if it ensnares you, all it takes is a charlatan that's, let's face it, not even really that good with words, just good enough with words to fool the dumbest people, because they're not, Kent Hovind. I'll give it to Kent Hovind that he's good at being a liar. But some of these flat earthers that I interact with, I mean, my God, it's just like, how could anybody listen to you and think that you know what you're talking about? But it's just the basic things, Like,
Well,
if Earth isn't a sphere, gravity doesn't exist. But gravity does exist, so Earth is not flat. But then watching flat Earth priests like spin it and be like, no, gravity isn't real. It's this other thing. It's like, oh my
yeah.
God, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous.
Well, it's interesting too because, like, so let's, Eric Dubay, he's like a kind of a famous flat earther, and he has like 100 proofs or whatever. But if you actually
200
200 proofs, if you actually do the experiments, they fail, But the problem is,
they're also like 10
they're
10
stupid.
in a row are the same thing.
Yeah, I know, right? But they're kind of dumb experiments too, because it's like, okay, so let's just take the eye level thing. That is not a scientific experiment,
No,
like
it's also not true.
And it's not true, but
if you use actual scientific instrumentation rather than just look with my eyes,
with your eyes, yeah, I know.
But about 50 of them are they're just like, they actually think that if you go up in a helicopter, the Earth should rotate under you and you land somewhere else.
I know.
It's like, look, all right, so you don't understand middle school physics. That's fine, but that's not an argument. I mean,
right.
Anybody can demonstrate this, right? Get on anything that's moving at a constant velocity, jump straight up. What happens? You land back where you were standing.
Yeah.
Right. That's called conservation of momentum. It's easily demonstrable. It's done in middle schools. I mean, this is really, really ridiculous stuff. Yeah. But that's, when you're that willfully ignorant, you will ignore even the most rudimentary demonstrations, right? You'll just plug your ears. And
I had a guy that worked for us I work at a cabinet shop, and it's a really small cabinet shop, and we hired a guy that was a flat earther, and like I at the time was really into debunking flat earth, I guess, and this was a couple of years ago. But he got hired on, and at some point in our exchange, we were driving to a job or something, he said something to me about the earth being flat. And so I asked him, so what about just meteorites or something, And he said they could fly a plane up there and throw them out of the plane. And I was like, dude,
yeah, where's the plane?
Come on, man. Like this is so irrational. But
I mean, they basically have to deny the existence of most things, right?
Yeah.
Planets, stars, none of that's real.
Satellites,
that's not real. Antarctica, not real. You know what I mean? They literally think that that the South Pole is not real.
I know. And I asked him, I was like, so how come Alaska stays day all the time? Like during the summer. And he's like, I don't think that's true. And I was like, yes, it is.
Well, no, they don't have a problem with the northern hemisphere because that's the inner part of the disk. Right. I actually just did this. I just last week released. I hadn't done any flat earth debunks for a while, but I just thought, it's fun. Let me do one more. And I did another little one, and it kind of blew up. It got like 150,000 views in like a couple of days. And now all the flat earthers are trying to do their little response videos to it, and it's really hilarious. But I did talk about this thing where it's like, look, there's a reason why there is no flat earth animation that shows the day and night patterns and the seasons at the same time, because it cannot be done. And I picked a place, I mentioned Antarctica, but they believe the South Pole doesn't exist. So it's like, great, go to the very southern tip of South America. There's a town in South America. In December, it's got 17 hours of daylight. And on the same day, Point Barrow, Alaska has 24-hour nighttime. So here you go. Show me a sun going around this thing, make it illuminate the southern tip of South America way on the outer edge of the disk almost the entire time, and make it never illuminate Point Barrow, Alaska towards the center of the disk at all.
Yeah.
Look, that is the death blow to flat Earth. It can't be done because if you were to do it, you would create some pattern that is completely nonsensical, and light does not behave that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, my
there's
friend
a reason why they don't do it, because
Yeah.
you cannot do it.
Yeah, I had a really good friend of mine. I mean, and him and I are pretty close, and he got into flat Earth. I don't know if he still is. I hope not. But and he was posting a lot about it on Facebook and stuff, and I would just go on there and just like take apart whatever he posted, and then his friends and his girlfriend would get really mad at me, you know, and like, why do you always have to do that? Why do you always have to go in there and just like, you know, just like leave his post alone? I'm like, because there's people that are looking at this that are going to become a flat earther because they're not going to do their due diligence. Yeah. And it's really important that we like know what the truth is no matter what. And if you are going to post something and you are my friend on Facebook and I know it's demonstrably wrong, I have a moral obligation to change that, you know, like make sure that your viewers aren't going to believe that. And so, yeah, it's a strange thing, but I don't
get
think
so many comments that say, why do you care? What if it's not true? What do you care? You know, and you know, look, it matters. You know, it matters what people think, and we need to combat misinformation.
Yeah, they vote.
That's all there is.
You know, yeah,
and they propagate misinformation. So you know, it has to be dealt with.
Yeah. So. Well, damn, dude, it's been awesome talking to you. I'm really stoked that you got to come on here with me. And why don't you just shout out your channel and stuff? And
yeah, sure. Yeah, it's called Professor Dave Explains. I mean, I do a little bit of these debunks, but that's not the main purpose of the channel. I have tutorials in chemistry, physics, astronomy, biochemistry, biology, anatomy and physiology, mathematics. I'm trying to go real broad with it, and you can learn a little bit. And then the debunkings are fun. You know, see, the thing is, people get a kick out of them, and so they get a lot of views, way more than the flat earthers. And they say, oh, you know, you're paying for views and you're blah, blah, blah. No, just everybody loves making fun of you because you're the dumbest people. Like, it's not like a JFK assassination thing, which probably totally was a conspiracy. I bet. I don't know. Who knows?
I'm with you. Yeah.
You believe the dumbest thing that anyone on earth believes. We love to mock you because it's so funny. Like, that's why I get so many views. And honestly, that's why I keep making them. I said I wouldn't, but it's just, I get so many views and people love them so much. I'm just like, all right, every 6 months I'll do one of these. I mean, it's just, and it's fun for me.
I feel like the argument has been closed since day one on this, but for some reason I listen to every flat earth debate I can find. It's so ridiculous. I don't know why, man.
You know?
It is. It's entertaining, and it's like you said, it's like you're listening to these people try to like school the scientismists or whatever, you know.
It's insane. Yeah. It's completely insane. I mean, and then they're all doing responses to my latest video. You should check out a few of them. It's funny because I put forth 10 challenges for flat earthers, and they all respond answering none of the challenges. And just like, they're just like, oh, straw man, you know, red herring, reification. It's just like, dude,
like trying to throw out fallacies that they don't understand. That's
funny. It's like, you know, how is it a straw man when I'm explaining that the earth can't be flat?
That's a steel man. Yeah.
It's just, it's endless entertainment for me and everybody watching. So
it's awesome.
Pretty good. It's good fun. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, man, cool. Well, thank you so much, and I'll probably release this in a couple of weeks, but I hope maybe we can do this again sometime. It was cool talking to you and getting to meet you.
Yeah, sure, man. Anytime.
All right, brother. Take it easy. Have a good night.
Cool.
All right. Bye.
Later.